Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, February 18th, 2025 at 7 p.m. And we have a special session tonight for one committee meeting, and then we will move into a regular session. That committee is Finance and Personnel, and I'm going to ask all council members just to stay at the dais. And the Finance and Personnel Committee is chaired by Jeff Reisner and joined by Michael Wood, Beth Clodfelter, and Micah McCary.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Personnel Committee has three items this evening. The first one is what's called a then and now certificates, and we're lucky tonight we have the auditor who can explain then and now and future, so on.
These typically only come up early in the year. These are payments we have to make before we have a purchase order in place. And so we have this big fat stamp that we put on and I sign off on the vouchers that the auditors require. So we show, because whenever we pay for something, we should have approval through a PO in place. What happens at the beginning of the year is we can't close out first thing in the year, and because we're still, for one thing, bank statements come in after the end of the year, the things that we still have to include in last year's reporting, and but things come up that departments need. At least one of these was an emergency situation of something that they needed to buy. Some of them are bills that we get in January, but before we could get the budget in place for them to enter requisitions and purchase orders in the system, they still have to pay some of these bills so that we aren't late or get our lights turned off or anything like that. So that's what all of these are. I don't know if there's anything particular on one of them you want to ask about. Leanna did tell me that there were more last year when we had to do this, so that makes you feel any better.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee or the? Yes.
If there's no questions on this item, I meant to mention at the beginning of the meeting that we have a slight agenda change for the Finance and Personnel Committee. We will not be discussing the third item, Mansfield House. Sorry, Chair Reisner. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that makes my job a lot easier. 1/3 of my work has been short. Yeah. Getting back to appropriations, we'll turn back to the auditor.
Okay, this next one is for the municipal court fund. They get fees through this indigent drivers alcohol fund, and they're very limited on what they can use the money for, and it can't be used for personnel or anything like that. But so they have started a process where they can use some of their money for programs, drivers intervention programs for testing and evaluations. So they didn't put it in their original budget for the year and would like to appropriate $10,000 now to move forward with that process, and that they'll be providing. And they do have the money unappropriated it's a court grant, so it's $260. It's not out of the general fund.
Oh, that's good. Comments? Administration, anything to add to this?
No.
How about you, Treasurer? Okay. Well, I believe that concludes Finance Personnel.
Thank you, Member Reisner. We will now enter into our regular session of council. I'd like to start that by acknowledging. I'm sorry.
You skipped one. You have Mansfield lease agreement up there.
We removed it from the agenda, I thought, upon your agreement when you came in tonight. No, I'm sorry.
No,
Oh.
not removing.
Oh, I'm very sorry. I received false information. Third agenda item, back to the Personnel Committee.
This always happens.
Spoke too soon.
Oh, my workload just increased. Mansfield House lease agreement. I believe the mayor would like to speak to that.
I certainly can.
Okay.
So with the help of the law director, we've put together a lease agreement which for the Athens County Convention and Tourism Bureau or Visitors Bureau, I can't remember if the title has changed, but whatever. To utilize the Mansfield House. The Mansfield House has kind of been their home since the early 90s, I believe. It's been their home for quite a while after the Mansfield House was moved from what was the University Mall before the mall existed. Now we all know of it as the Market on East State Street, or on State Street. It was moved with some guidelines, and those guidelines being that the home be preserved as a historic house. Interior-wise, it's basically a log cabin. And then the plan early on was to use that for the rec department. It was going to be administrative offices for the rec department. Well, we ended up building the community center, and that became the offices for the Arts, Parks, and Recreation, or the rec department at the time. And the House then has been used by the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We have not had a signed lease to use that building since 1993. For a sundry of different reasons, but it is what it is. This is now to bring us in alignment with other properties in the community center that are also leased out. So this is to establish that lease agreement with Boone Troyer at the Convention and Visitors Bureau to use it for $20,000 a year in $1,666.66 is the monthly amount to use that building going retro back to January of 2025 of this year. One of the things that's in that lease agreement that council should all have is a maintenance portion of that agreement. We recognize the Mansfield House needs a lot of repairs. As a matter of fact, we had Mr. Barney Gruser go through the structure and deemed that we need to invest, and we think this is kind of on the low end, about $80,000 to continue to preserve that building, which is our plan. It'll likely be somewhere in the 150 range, but since we know that we have to do maintenance on that building, Mr. Troyer is asking that we remove the maintenance paragraph in there, holding them liable for maintenance in that building. We know we have to do the maintenance anyway, to strike that out and just to get the lease going for the remainder of the time that the Convention and Visitors Bureau is going to be occupying the Mansfield House. To my understanding, they are going to be moving out somewhere around the midpoint of this year into their new office space that is on Stimson Avenue. I'll let Mr. Troyer do the big reveal on that one, but I want to move this lease forward with the amendment being striking out the maintenance portion of it. Everything else is fine. As per an email that came from Mr. Troyer, his concern was the maintenance agreement, given the amount of work that needs to take place in that is not their fault. It's just, it's an old log cabin.
So with that amendment that you want to put in to strike out the maintenance, it's going to be read, hopefully, for the first time this evening as a first reading, but we'll have to have a motion to amend first.
Well, actually, it's just the agreement that's attached. You can strike it now before the first reading.
Okay.
And at the first reading, there's also an emergency measure, and I think the mayor's going to ask for suspension of the rules.
I am going to ask for suspension of the rules so that we can get this agreement finally, after do the math, how many years, to
Okay.
finally get this in place.
32 years.
Member Clodfelder?
I'm curious, Mayor Patterson, do you know what is going to happen with the Mansfield House once the Convention and Visitors Bureau moves out in the mid-year point?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It has a lot of value. It has to be preserved as a historic structure. And I'll be working with the Director of Arts, Parks and Recreation, Catherine N. Jordan, to see, if we can find a suitable end user for that. There have been a number of things kicked around. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, so I would almost rather abstain from talking about it, but it could really complement Weston, as it always has been, Westendall Gardens, the native plantings, as well as the fact that that building has, I believe it's 11, if not 12 parking spaces assigned to it as well. Because the thought was always that it's the Convention Visitors Bureau, you're gonna have lots of people coming and visiting. But it technically does have parking spaces next to it as well that are dedicated to the Convention Visitors, or to the Mansfield House. It could be anybody, whoever uses it.
Member Swain.
I can tell you one definite, and I was told this on my way out the door of the house today. Project Plant will continue to maintain the gardens on the front of the house along East State Street as long as possible.
Yay.
They are looking for new members. The youngest member is 69 years old, so put that plug in there right now. We could use some more green thumbs.
Mr. Mayor.
If I may, Councilmember Swank, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, they do a beautiful job with the garden in the front. The native plantings garden, Westendall, is gorgeous as well. It's, again, just needs TLC for the structure itself. One of the things we will not be doing with the Mansfield House is making it ADA accessible up on the second floor, just because of the deed restrictions on maintaining its historic integrity. To put an elevator exterior-wise would violate that. If you've ever been in the upper floor of the Mansfield House, it has doorways that are probably 28 to 30 inches wide. They're not big, because people weren't big back then. So, or maybe they were. But.
Any further comments? Okay, Mr. President, we're back where we started.
Okay, my apologies on the agenda snafu, my misunderstanding. We will now move on to the regular session of council. I'd like to start that by acknowledging that here in Athens County, we live and work on land initially settled and developed by earlier people, particularly the Shawnee and the Osage, and those identified through cultures commonly known as the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient. This acknowledgement reminds us of the importance of honoring history, people, and the planet as we work to improve our city's legacy. Our first order of business is to establish quorum. We have 6 of 7 council members in attendance, and we have quorum. The next item of business is the disposition of minutes from the regular sessions of council held January 13th and 21st and February 3rd, 2025. May I have a motion for these minutes?
So,
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed, nay. The minutes have been approved. We now have communications. I will start with a communication to City Council. You all received in your email for a notice from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control for a T-Rex liquor license transfer from Hops on Broadway in Grove City, Ohio, to Frida's Cocina LLC at 120 West Union Street and Patio in Athens, Ohio. Are there any questions or discussion about this Ohio Division of Liquor Control? Member Swank.
With the help of the Law Director's Office, we were able to determine what was going in there, and it's going to be a full-service Hispanic-Mexican restaurant. They currently have 2 others in the state, one in Lancaster, and it escapes me what the other city was. But going online and looking at their menu, it looks like a very, very nice addition to the city of Athens, and filling a currently vacant building.
Okay, no objections to this transfer from City Council? Any comments from the mayor or the public?
Just, can you remind me the address on that again? I'm sorry.
It is the former Ciro building, 120 West Union. Any comments? Okay, other communications from council members? Okay, moving on to reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason.
Only that our new prosecutor started last Monday, and his name is Jamarcus McCartney. He came to us from Nelsonville. He was the Nelsonville city prosecutor and did prosecutions for Chansey and Gloucester, and we're thrilled to have him. He hit the ground running. So I also want to thank Justin Townley, because Justin took on majority of the work for 4 months while we were without a prosecutor. And I came back this evening and Justin was still down in the office working. So I really appreciate everything that he did to keep us afloat during that time.
Excellent. Auditor Hecht, any report?
No report.
Treasurer Thomas?
Yeah, I will take a minute. Basically, you have all received last week the closing reports for December of 2024. That would serve kind of as the year-end closing reports as well. And then my report, for the reconciliations. I won't bore you with all the details, but I know we do talk interest rates from time to time in here. Member Reisner usually has questions. So I just wanted to go over what we did. I did this last year too, just to give everybody an update if you didn't see it in your email. For the year 2024, our investments did well for the city. We brought in a total of $1,892,453.88. So our investments actually were very good. I did include the spreadsheet on there. If you take a look at it, you can look through and see where some of the different monies were invested. Our best partner, for the year, as we had, with interest rates being what they were, we did a nice investment with Hocking Valley Bank for the year. And that really netted us $722,352. So that was kind of where the bulk of that was. If you remember, back in May, the auditor and I, we kind of decided to make a change in how the interest was allocated. Before we had it spread out over a lot of things. After we looked at the code, we determined that we could actually change that a little bit, thus funneling a little bit more money into the general fund, because that was the concern. So I made sure I posted down at the bottom, and you would see this in your closing reports as well that came from the auditor's office, that the general fund was able to absorb $755,306 of that money. So that was a nice help to the general fund. I know the next question would be, what about 2025? I can tell you, again, interest rates have gone down a little bit. And so, I would not expect this much. We also need to keep in mind that some of the money that we had invested was money that we were using. We had fire station money, we had things. That money is now gone. We've used that money to pay our bills and things like that. So our pool of money that we invest is going to be a little bit smaller as we go into 2025. But again, I'll continue to just look for opportunities. Anytime we see something that we can save a little money back, invest it, and make a little extra, we're going to continue to do that. With we work well with the auditor's office and the mayor. We all talk from time to time and decide, how can we make this? How can we maximize what we're trying to do here? And we'll continue to do that in 2025.
What instruments are our investments limited to? Just basic?
So basically, I'm very limited. The state. I have to be very, very cautious on what we do. CDs is mostly, we do a lot of work with Chase Bank on our CDs within the Hocking Valley, obviously. Our investment firm, Red Tree, that I work with out of Cincinnati, and that falls under the U.S. Bank umbrella. And they will invest us in treasuries, like securities, things like that, a little bit of commercial paper, but again, it's very specific on what we have to do. That's why we use Red Tree. This is what they specialize in. And actually, they've done really well. If you do look at our thing, they were kind of our second best. We have, they brought us in $561,620. But again, most of the things that we invest in are very conservative. We're not allowed to do anything crazy.
Kind of things you could get at the credit union, no equities or anything like that?
No.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, Treasurer Thomas. Mayor Patterson?
A lot of money.
President Powell, I have a couple things I'd like to share with council, because there's an inordinate amount of disinformation and misinformation that's flowing out there in the world these days. One thing I want to share, I received an email, this was on February 12th at 2:47 p.m., and this was our having to go and respond to allegations that the Lostro building was pumping toxins and substances out into the street drain, the storm drain system. Steve Adams, who's our engineering or our environmental coordinator, went up there and with the help of Bridger Klein, which is our storm water specialist, found that the water that was being discharged was well under the cap, which is what is not permissible is anything above 5,000 parts per million. This was not discharging that. It was basically discharging groundwater from the elevator shaft in that building due to the rain events that we've had and snow events that are melting and seeping down in there. Ohio EPA has given us the all clear on that building and what's being discharged. We are currently having the contractor discharge into the sanitary sewer. That too, given the parts per million of the water that's collected, Ohio EPA concurred and said that is fine to do such. So that's what's going on, just to dispel any misinformation or disinformation that's flowing out there when it comes to discharge during this project out onto Court or onto Union Street. So I believe that council all received the same email from Steve Adams. If you haven't, I will certainly get it to you. That was number one. Number two, again, a lot of swirling disinformation, misinformation out there when it comes to tax credits for the Lostro project. I'm going to say this again. I believe the auditor has weighed in on this in the past. There's no city tax credits. We don't have tax credits to offer to anybody. The credits that the Lostro project has been able to pull together were largely state and county tax credits. Things like the ESID, that's a federally backed loan program. So it's not like that's a credit at all. It's money, it's low interest. And any parcel in the uptown area or in our B zone can apply for ESID funding to make energy efficiency improvements to their building if they choose to. The brownfield funding that the Lostro building received came from ODOD, Ohio Department of Development, through the brownfield program. There was other historic tax credits. That's a state program that they were afforded with that structure, as well as a sundry of other interesting tax credits that they were able to pull together. But the city does not have tax credits that we can award to any developer in the city. We just don't. And so to say that the city is giving away taxpayer dollars via tax credits is a complete fallacy. That's not accurate at all. So I just want you to know that. I think you do. I want the viewing audience to know that so that it's out there. And I would be more than happy to have anybody from our local media reach out to me to find out more if they so choose to.
Thank you, Mayor. We will now move on to ordinances for third reading. I will read the title and introduce the introducing council member. Ordinance 06-25 is an ordinance to rezone undeveloped lots on Pomeroy Road from R1 to R3, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
Thank you, President Crowell. In terms of 0625, in view of the letter that members of council and the administration received on Friday from the applicant that initiated this rezoning quest for the development of affordable multifamily housing, that they are withdrawing their application from the program and therefore essentially rendering this request moot. I would move that council table 0625.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for tabling ordinance 625. Are there any comments or questions? Member Reisner.
I'm against tabling it. Tabling it is just basically, we're kicking the issue down the road. Something that's put on the table can always be taken off the table later. I would rather we have an up or down vote just to settle the matter. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Others? Member Spelness?
Yes, well, I think I've gone on record pretty solid that I would approve a change, but given the situation and that the person, the entity that wanted to change this is pulling out altogether, I think that we ought to wait and see what comes of it. Is some other organization going to buy this and do something different with? There's all kinds of possibilities. So I'd rather not make a decision now. I think tabling is a good choice.
Other comments or questions about the motion to table 0625? All those in favor of approving the tabling of 0625 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion, the ordinance has been tabled, Member Swank. Ordinance 07-25 is an ordinance amending Athens City Zoning Code, Title 23, Chapter 23.03, General Regulations and Permitted Modifications, Section 23.03.13L, 2, Sign Regulations, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
Thank you, President Crowell. Essentially, all this ordinance does, and we've discussed it in great detail, is to change the size and square inches of political or ideological signs. In no way, shape, or form does this affect the content, the message, the candidate, or any other thing posted on the sign, but it simply increases the size of the sign from 350 square inches to 432 square inches. The reason that's important, if a candidate or someone wanting to support an issue were to buy such a sign, the standard sign is 432 square inches. President Corral, I move the council pass 0725.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 07-25. Are there any comments or questions from council members on this ordinance? Elected officials? Audience members? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting 07-25 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 08-25 is an ordinance amending the 2025 appropriation ordinance 115-24 and ordinance 30-24, authorizing engineering services for rehabilitation of the Stimson Avenue Bridge, project number 358, introduced by Councilmember Spionis.
Yes, as we all know, it's important to continue to keep our bridges and infrastructure safe, and that requires maintenance from time to time. So this is actually two. It is the Simpson Avenue Bridge and the, what's it called again? And the other one, I've forgotten the name of it. Okay, so anyway, it's, the change here is the Service Safety Director is further authorized to expend up to $5,300,590.19 and $4,470,590.19 to small cities ODOT Fund 589 TC 500. And then the change is $830,000 from the Street Rehabilitation Fund 572 TC 500 for said project. And yes, so this is making sure that our Stimson Avenue Bridge is in good shape and safe.
She needs to move to a man.
So I propose we pass this.
Member Spionis, was there additional communication from Service Safety Director Stone about a change in the bids on this project? Is there a need for an amendment for this?
Yes, I apologize. There
Thank you.
was. This went kind of back and forth, and sorry about that. Let me grab it here. This was changed fairly substantially. That was a mistake, I'm sorry.
No worries.
So it's authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise, accept bids where necessary, and I had it all printed out too, nicely, and enter into contract for construction of the rehabilitation of the Stimson Avenue Bridge. So in Section 1, Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to advertise, accept bids where necessary, and enter into contract with the construction of the rehabilitation of the Stimson Avenue Bridge, Project 358. And then it goes down to Section 2, $1,204,309.81 for this Street Rehab Fund, 572 TC 500. And then Section 3, it says the Service Safety Director is further authorized to expend up to $6,254,900 as follows, and then $4,470,590.19 to the Small Cities Fund, ODOT Fund 589 TC 500, and then finally, $1,784,309.81. Oh, wait a minute, that says $91. From Street Rehabilitation Fund 572 TC 500 for said project 358. So, yeah, some substantial changes happened on Friday. So I urge council to pass this.
Well, that'd be an amendment.
So you are making a
Yes. I'm
motion
sorry.
to amend
Yes.
0825, I believe.
Yes, I'm asking to amend this. So
Okay.
this would be a first reading then.
Is there a copy of the amendment?
What? That's,
Yes.
yeah, right.
To amend the appropriations budget for $150,000.
Member Smike, you want to help us here?
So if I hear this right, the price went up about $1 million.
Yes.
Pretty close.
And is that because the bids came back, or that's a lot of money? Yes,
Mayor
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Swank, yes, it is a lot of money. But it is a bridge.
Right.
The Ohio Revised Code, changed to where it used to be a bid could be accepted if it was 10% over. It has changed to where now it's 20%.
Okay.
That's
Lo and behold,
17%.
this grant came in, there was two bids. This one being the lower came in at about 17%. And a point of clarification, if I may, because Councilmember Spellness, you did mention the two bridge projects.
Yeah, that's the other one.
And those are separate.
Yes, that's another one.
Completely separate because of the funding stream. And unfortunately, for the 33 overpass bridge, we had no bidders come in and bid on that project. While its estimated engineer's cost for that bridge was so much less. It was, don't hold me to this, but I think it was somewhere in the $200,000 range to put decorative guard fencing up there, and to redo the parapet, repaint it and everything. We are gonna try and work with this contractor, who we are awarding this bid to see if they would reconsider, bidding again, because we'll have to put it back out to bid again, but, rethinking that 33 overpass bridge.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Member Spellness. Member Swank, more on the amendment?
Well, I kind of come back to the mayor for clarification, and it may be too early on this. I take it this new rule going from 10 to 20% probably kicked in about January 1st or sometime around there, or anyway, sometime in the not-too-distant past. In talking with your colleagues, with your positions with the various organizations in Ohio and the nation, is this something that's become a trend? And if it is, this could potentially put a real strain on city resources, where we had a 10% cap before, people come in 8 or 9, maybe 11, or 8, 9, so they didn't have to bid again. Now we're going to start seeing people come in, at this case, 17, 18, 19.
Yeah. Councilmember Swank, I'm glad you mentioned that. We are certainly looking at things from a different strategic lens when it comes to putting projects out to bid. I'd rather not disclose this, but I'd be more than happy to
Yeah, understood.
talk about it. at some other point in time, but the short answer to your question is, yeah.
Thank you for the additional information. The amendment on the table right now for 0825, just to clarify, is to increase the appropriation and expenditure from the street rehabilitation fund from $250,000 to $1,204,309.81. Are there any additional questions or comments on this amendment? Did we have a second from Member Spellman? Member Spellman's made the motion, Member Reisner seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Member Spellman, the amendment has been approved and the ordinance has been read for the first time.
Right. Thank you.
Moving on. Ordinance 09-25 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise, accept bids where necessary, and enter into contracts for design, maintenance, and additions to the Richland Bridge over the Hocking River and the Stroud's Run Bridge over US 33, project number 381, introduced by Councilmember Spianis.
Okay, this one was where we had two, not the other one. Sorry about that. Okay, so this one is the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to advertise, accept bids where necessary, and enter into contracts for design, maintenance, and additions to the Richland Bridge over the Hocking River and the Stroud's Run Bridge over US 33. So, Section 2, the 2025 Appropriation Ordinance 11524 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $240,000 to the Street Fund 2020 TC 500 and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. The Service Safety Director is further authorized to expend up to $262,000 from the Street Fund 220 TC 500 for said Project 381. Again, maintenance of bridges and making them safe for all of us to use.
Is
So,
there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Member Swank?
So if we did not receive a bid, what are we doing here?
Rebidding it.
Oh, rebid, okay. Okay, so we're going to,
We're just going to turn right back around and go back out to bid again.
okay.
Yeah, which is not atypical. I think the auditor has a question.
Yes, Auditor Hecht.
Yeah, I'm hoping this is just a clerical change. When we were reviewing this ordinance, not in the beginning as we missed it, but it's actually project number 382. I don't know if that can be considered a clerical.
Is the title of it right?
The title has 381.
Yes, everything is fine except the number of the
But the
project.
project says for the Hocking River, the Richland Bridge over the Hocking and Stroud's Run Bridge, then I can consider that to be a clerical error, as long as the title was,
It is,
Fine,
it's
it's
the
just
same
the number.
project, it's just the project number.
well, that's listed in 3 different places there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Debbie, just
No, I
found
think
that.
the Welcome Home project is 382.
Is that the one that we had wrong? Oh, maybe
Yeah.
this one is right.
This one is correct. We weren't sure there for a while.
Never mind. So I figured you'd already been going back and forth with my office.
Yes.
Thank you, Clerk Walker.
Never mind.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from City Council? And now other elected officials? Treasurer Thomas, anything else from the auditor, Mayor? Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt 09-25. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is approved and 09-25 has been adopted. Ordinance 10-25 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 15-22 to authorize an increase in the expenditure for a new restroom facility at the West State Park, project number 349, introduced by Councilmember Thomas on behalf of Councilmember McCary.
Thank you. Micah sent some notes just as a reminder as to what the ordinance is about. This is to add new restrooms into the West State Park. The project was bid 3 times without success due to constraints. Director Jordan found a prefabricated restroom facility that has been identified as more affordable, but still does require additional funds. The ordinance increases the expenditure by $50,000 to cover the cost. The funds have already been appropriated, and this is just an authorization adjustment. Knowing all that, the title, an ordinance amending Ordinance 1522 to authorize an increase in the expenditure for a new restroom facility at the West State Park, Project 349. And the relevant change is Section 3. Service Safety Director is further authorized to expend up to $300,000 from APR Income Tax Fund 273. Can I get a motion to approve?
So
Adopt.
moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions from City Council? Auditor Hecht? Treasurer Thomas? Mr. Patterson?
No, just other than, this is so long overdue. I'm glad that we're finally getting there in our most, I would say, and contend, most utilized sports park in the city of Athens. We'll continue to maintain the original restroom and maybe rename that the Crowell Thomas soccer toilets, and then the rest will, the other one, I don't know.
Thank you, but no thank you.
You go a lot of ways with that one.
Any comments or questions from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of 10-25 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 11-25 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 56-22 to authorize an increase in the expenditure for tennis and pickleball courts, project number 350, introduced by Councilmember Thomas on behalf of Councilmember McCary.
Thank you. This is just as a reminder, an increase of $21,750 to cover necessary recoding and repairs due to iron oxidation in the asphalt affecting the court surface. Again, this is another one. The funds have been allocated, and this ordinance adjusts the authorization to proceed with the repairs. Let's see, an ordinance amending Ordinance 5622 to authorize an increase in the expenditure for tennis and pickleball courts, Project 350. And then down to Section 3, Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $350,000 from tax code, APR Income Tax Code 273. Lost my place. Can I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adoption of 11-25. Any comments or questions from City Council members? Elected officials? Public? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries and 11-25 is adopted. 12-25 is an ordinance authorizing unneeded or obsolete municipal personal property to be sold by internet auction, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 12-25.
Second.
Let me read the pertinent section. Section 1, the Athens City Council is in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 721.15D, hereby authorizes the Service Safety Director or their designee to enter into an agreement with a government auction service to conduct internet auctions for the selling of unneeded or obsolete municipal personal property, and shall require the bidder to pay all fees, taxes, and charges. Auction items may be advertised for no less than 10 days, including Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Reisner. We have a motion and a second for approval of 12-25. Are there any comments or questions from City Council members?
Can I make one comment?
Public official, please, elected official.
A couple weeks ago, Member Wood asked and made a statement that made perfect sense. Why don't we just adopt this and do it so we don't have to do it every year? Unfortunately, the Ohio Revised Code says that you have to do it every calendar year.
Thanks for trying, Member Wood.
That's what the code says. Good thought on his part, but code won't let us.
Other elected officials, audience members. Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting 12-25 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 13-25 is an ordinance amending the 2025 appropriation ordinance 115-24 and authorizing an interfund transfer, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 13-25.
Second.
Allow me to read just section 1 here. The 2025 appropriation ordinance 115-24 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $120,000 to General Fund 101, transaction code 600 for transfer and increasing the total appropriations by said amounts. Section 2 lists the various funds from and to and the amounts. Everyone has a copy on their disc. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Reisner. We have a motion and a second to approve 13-25. Are there any comments or questions from city council members? Member Clodfelter.
Just an observation, I guess. Boy, the cemeteries are getting expensive. Is there any prospect of some financial relief in that area at any point, or is this just going to keep increasing?
Yep.
We just have to pay for it. We don't really have, the cemetery is pretty full. We don't have a way to, get money from selling plots. There are some, but not very many at all. And we don't have a way to get revenue. Townships can issue a tax or levy to support their cemeteries, but the city cannot without permission from the township, and we do not have that.
Thank you.
Member Swank.
Member Clodfelter, essentially what happened is several years ago, and I don't know how many it was, basically the state says cemeteries are your responsibility, but don't ask us for money.
Member Reisner.
I just want to point out that Member Clodfelter is essentially raising a dead issue.
I knew it was coming. Thank you, Member Reisner. Any other questions or comments, city council members, other elected officials,
I had
or audience members?
couldn't let it go.
Who needs Saturday Night Live?
Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting 13-25 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is adopted. We now have ordinances for second reading. I will read the title and then check to see if there are any comments or questions. Ordinance 14-25 is an ordinance authorizing the annual purchase of water softening salt for the water treatment plant, introduced by Councilmember McCary. Ordinance 15-25 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 121-24, authorizing 2025 staffing levels, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Mr. Reisner, is there an amendment for 15-25?
Oh, by golly, there is. Maybe the auditor can help me out with this, too. If I'm reading this right, we're to amend on 218 add from Fund 101.106, General Municipal Court Probation Officer, striking out a half full-time equivalent to a full-time. So it goes from 0.5 to 1. I believe that's the only change. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. Clerk Walker, do you agree?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
So we have an amendment now on the,
So we have a motion to amend 15-25. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend 15-25. Any comments or questions on this amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ordinance has been amended, Chair Reisner, and read for the first time.
I don't believe there's any reason to suspend the rules on this, is there?
Not that I am aware of. Ordinance 16-25 is an ordinance authorizing compensation for the recently promoted diversion program coordinator in municipal court at a rate in accordance with Ordinance 117-24, the non-union personnel fringe benefit package, Section 22, promotion, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Ordinance 17-25 is an ordinance closing East Union Street between Court and University Terrace on Saturday, April 5th, 2025, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the International Street Fair, introduced by Councilmember Spielness. Ordinance 18-25 is an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code, Chapter 11.04, vending, peddling, and soliciting, to allow vending in a designated area during the International Street Fair, introduced by Councilmember Spielness. We now move on for ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 19-25 is an ordinance accepting the petition for annexation of approximately 34.874 acres owned by Frander Properties LLC, east of Cable Lane, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
The next three items, 19, 20, and 21, are all related. We'll take them one at a time, obviously. Because we do not do annexation all that often, I think it would be wise to read the very short 6 whereases so that we know what the process is and how we got to where we are today. Whereas a petition for annexation of approximately 34.874 acres was filed by Frander Properties, LLC, and whereas Ordinance 89-24 authorized the mayor to enter into an annexation agreement with the Athens Township trustees for said property, and whereas the Board of Commissioners of Athens County has released said acreage for annexation of the city of Athens, and whereas 60 days from the date of the filing have now lapsed in accordance with Section 709.04 of the Ohio Revised Code, and whereas the city has agreed to provide city water, sewer, fire, police services immediately upon successful completion of the annexation process, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, that we are accepting the petition for annexation. As you can see, this started a long time ago, way back in 2024, and had to go through multiple steps and multiple approvals to get to this point. Tonight, we are accepting at first reading the petition for annexation. For clarification, the property in question is if you're on Cable Lane, if you go over to what used to be Super America and start up North May, it turns into Cable Lane. And once you pass that brick ranch house on the right, there's a very, very steep driveway or road that goes up to the right. There's where you go up. It's about 35 acres up there. And that's what we're talking about at first reading of 1925.
Thank you, Member Swank. Are there any comments or questions on 019-25? Elected officials, Mayor Patterson, public. Ordinance 20-25 is an ordinance designating the zone for the Cable Lane annexation area, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
2025 designates what zoning classification this 34 acres will be. As all of us know, we are in dire need of places for single-family homes in this town, and this will be, by ordinance, if passed, designated as an R1 zone. Initially, there will be one house up at the top of the hill, but there is the potential for adding additional houses later, which we'll reference when we get to 2125. So 2025, that's what that's about, and has been read for the first time.
Thank you, Member Swank. Any comments or questions on the zone for this potentially annexed property? Elected officials, Mayor Patterson, members of the public. Ordinance 21-25 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to execute a perpetual right-of-way utility easement with Frander Properties LLC on property annexed into the city on Cable Lane, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
This is 2125 addresses the future. This property on the northern end, if additional houses were to be located, is the area in which we would run the necessary utilities for those homes. This authorization for perpetual right-of-way would give the city to do that forever. So that's what 2125 is about, and it also has been read for the first time.
Thank you, Member Swank. Any comments or questions from City Council on 21-25? Elected officials, Mayor Patterson, members of the public. Ordinance 22-25 is an ordinance approving then and now certificates for payment and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me to read, essentially, if you look on your disk drive of 2225, you'll see Section 1, which lists 17 then and now certificates for purchases with no purchase orders in place for the following, as it was explained in our small committee session at the very beginning of our meeting tonight. So, is there any reason to suspend the rules on this one, or should we? Yes, Auditor.
I believe we've already paid these bills,
So,
if you would mind.
Okay.
Because they were due. This all came up in January. And I did want to add a little more clarification on the then and now certificate, that the purchases or expenses were incurred and then the money was approved afterwards. And that certification of funds is the purpose of that. That says the money was in the treasury or in the process of being collected to make our payment. And I sign off on a lot of certification of funds for contracts and projects and other things. We are supposed to have the money in place when it happens. So yes, I'd appreciate it.
in that case, I'd like to make a motion that we suspend the rules for 22-25.
Second.
And the reasons as stated by the auditor, that we should pay our bills on time. Member Klopfelder?
I have one question, if the auditor would entertain it. I'm just really curious, why are there two payments to Ohio University for fuel?
Those would be coming out of two different funds. So, we purchase fuel from the university for all of our city vehicles. And so each department is billed according to what they have. It's sort of a charge. They use a card when they pump gas. So it's police, fire, water, sewer. So that would be separate charges because the money comes out of different funds.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion and a second for suspending the rules for 22-25. Any comments or questions on this suspension? All those in favor of suspending the rules for 22-25 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the rules are suspended, Member Reisner.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 22-25.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt 22-25. Any comments or questions? Elected officials, Mayor Patterson, members of the public. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been approved. Ordinance 23-25 is an ordinance amending the 2025 appropriation ordinance 115-24, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me read Section 1, the 2025 appropriation ordinance 115-24. It's hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $10,000 to indigent drivers alcohol fund 260 TC 200-300 to cover the expenses of the driver intervention programs and increasing the total appropriations by said amount.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Are there any comments or questions on this ordinance? Elected officials, Mayor Patterson, members of the public? Ordinance 24-25 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a lease agreement for the Mansfield House and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I go on, should this be Mr. Mayor?
If I may, I'm not reading your mind, but I believe I know you're going to go. Since this has the retroactive clause in it, I'm comfortable, if council's comfortable, with having this come forward for its second reading and then suspend on second reading on the 3rd of March, or whatever that Monday is, the first Monday of March, just so that I can give Mr. Troyer, alert him to the amended change to pull out at his request the maintenance clause in this. I think just in all fairness to all parties involved, that that's the right thing to do. So I think we're fine timing-wise, just because it does state that this is retro back to January 2nd of 2025.
Okay. Well, let me read Section 1. Section 1, the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into a lease agreement for the Mansfield House with the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau beginning January 2nd, 2025, and continuing month to month thereafter until terminated. A copy of the lease attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. It's been read.
Thank you, Member Eisner. Are there any comments or questions on this ordinance? Elected officials, members of the public? Okay, we now move on to announcements and other business. I would like to ask for a motion to appoint Gavin Thompson to the Community Relations Commission. Gavin has been recommended to complete the term of Izzy Kaukinen, who recently resigned, and his term, or that term, expires on September 4th, 2026. Mr. Thompson is a lifelong member of our community, and I've known him for probably 35 years, and his resume has been forwarded to the council. I highly recommend his appointment. May I have a motion to recommend Mr. Thompson to the Community Relations Commission?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any comments or questions? Member Swank.
Just a little background. Ms. Kaukinen has moved from the city. She's away in another state at college, so she did serve well while she was on the committee.
And she has a wonderful voice. Okay, any other comments or questions? All those in favor of approving the appointment of Gavin Thompson to the Community Relations Commission signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Mr. Thompson has been appointed. We now have reappointments to new 3-year terms that will expire March 6th, 2028. The first is Rebecca Miller. Are there any comments, or may I have a motion to reappoint Rebecca Miller to the Community Relations Commission?
So
So-
moved.
Second?
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions about Ms. Miller? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ms. Miller is reappointed. The next reappointment is Mr. John Schmeeding. May I have a motion to reappoint John Schmeeding to the Community Relations Commission?
So
So
moved.
moved.
One of those will be a second. How about that? Okay. Any comments or questions on Mr. Schmeeding? Wonderful man. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Mr. Schmeeding is reappointed. And finally, Ms. Rachel Siegel. May I have a motion to approve the reappointment of Rachel Siegel to the Community Relations Commission?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on Ms. Siegel? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All three are reappointed to the Community Relations Commission. Are there any other announcements and other business? Seeing none? Yes, Mayor Patterson?
I appreciate the appointments and reappointments to the Community Relations Commission. I think council is aware of this. I'm going to just repeat it because what we're experiencing right now at the national level, the state level, and even on the local level, this committee, the Community Relations Commission, is going to be key for us to continue to encourage civil dialogue, civil discourse, modeling civility. So I just have to say that because I'm seeing it on the national stage, I'm seeing it on the state stage, and I'm seeing it in some ways in different fashions on the local level as well. So I'm glad that this committee is really going to re-energize and move forward because there's going to be a lot of work on the Community Relations Commission's plate.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. I will announce that, of course, we will have committee meetings next Monday night, so if chairs have any items they'd like to bring forward, please notify the clerk by Wednesday. We now have the opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda tonight. Is there anyone who would like to speak to any issue? Please come forward. And when you get to the podium, please tell us your name and whether you represent a group and your address, and you may have 3 minutes.
My name is Aaron Leatherwood. I live at 100 Coventry Lane here in Athens, Ohio. I've been working with a citizens group on the south side for the past couple months. We've been speaking to zoning issues on the south side. We had circulated a petition with 377 petitions, and I had sent that to council yesterday. I would like to give you the paper copies today.
Thank you.
I would note in providing the paper petitions that we have, as I mentioned, 377 signatures, but it's more than 377 signatures. These represent individuals in our community talking to neighbors, going door to door, holding 377 conversations. With all due respect to Solvay, I would not characterize our opposition to these issues as hostile. I would characterize this as democracy. It is foundational to the nature of democracy that you have citizen input and citizen dialogue. I would appreciate it on this issue if we had a more understanding reception to our concerns from council. Thank you.
Yeah, Jerry Miller, 14 Canterbury Drive. I'm one of the individuals that worked with Aaron. I want to express my appreciation for his leadership and all the neighbors that have really come together to talk with us. Walking up and down Canterbury Drive, and I'm amazed at a couple of things. First, the number of people who have Ring cameras and would still open the door. The number of individuals who said, no, I don't really want to sign this. I want to learn more about it. And those who called back. Who did want to sign a petition in relation to that. I got to know neighbors that I would never have really gotten to know personally because of this. And so I really appreciate this and the support that we show each other. And we have kind of collectively agreed that this is kind of a beginning for us. You know, the houses on the south side are a little further apart than on east. And it takes a little bit of effort to get to know each other. So that's one of the things that came out of this particular experience in organizing ourselves, and that we're going to continue this and kind of see where we can improve our own communication to the legislative bodies, our own communication with each other, and to share each other's joy. One of the things that you will notice, and I'll put this on the table as another particular item, if you drive up and down Canterbury and Coventry Drive, you're probably going to notice 24 houses or more that have recently had foundation work because of the drought, because of the rain, because of the age, not just because of the age, because the newest house in our neighborhood also had to have their foundation worked on. We care about our neighborhood extensively, and I think by this particular effort to come together as a community, we can help each other out. We can notice common problems that may be hidden underneath the soil. So I appreciate my neighbors. I appreciate the time and support that individual members of the council have given us by reaching out to us and talking with us and by responding to our inquiry. So thank you. Thank you to the neighbors, and I look forward to continuing our efforts to work with each other and to learn more about what we can do to make our community and our neighborhood better. So thank you. Thank you.
Any other members of the public that would like to address this public meeting? Seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:10 p.m.